The Galactic Council had long maintained peace among the stars. For thousands of years, its members, a mix of highly advanced species, ensured the galaxy stayed in balance, settling conflicts before they became full-blown wars. But that peace was now threatened by one name: Earth. The Council had never expected this small, isolated planet to rise so quickly. Human civilization, once primitive and scattered across continents, had rapidly advanced. Their technology, once limited to clunky spacecraft and simple weapons, was now rivaling the most advanced empires the galaxy had ever known. Even worse, humanity didn't operate under the same set of rules as the other species. The Council's members had always followed strict codes of conduct, relying on strategy and diplomacy to maintain the peace. But humans? They were unpredictable. Each species represented in the Council had its own unique strengths. The Krellians were tall, powerful beings capable of enduring extremes of heat and pressure. The Zorath, with their cold, calculating minds, were masters of espionage and subterfuge. And the Inari, a race of peaceful thinkers, used intellect to mediate disputes, but none of them were prepared for the humans. Humans had something no one else did: resilience, the sheer willpower to endure, to survive against the odds. And that made them dangerous. A group of diplomats and military strategists from the Council was sent to Earth under the assumption that they could easily convince the human leaders to stay out of the war between the Gorth and the Vrix, a war that had the potential to rip apart the entire galaxy. The Council had long seen the Gorth and the Vrix as nothing more than warring factions, and they believed that adding Earth to the mix would tip the scales in a way they couldn't control. But the moment they landed on Earth, the Council's task force knew they were dealing with something unlike any species they had encountered. General Sarah Drake, leader of Earth's military forces, met them with a calm confidence that immediately put them on edge. Despite the human race's relatively young place in the galactic timeline, General Drake exuded an aura of quiet strength, as though her entire species had been preparing for this moment their whole existence. "You're afraid of us, aren't you?" she asked, almost casually. The question, though simple, hung in the air like a challenge. The Council's agents were taken aback, their carefully crafted speeches faltering. They had come to Earth with a clear message: stay out of the war or face the consequences. But instead, they found themselves facing a species that didn't just want to survive. It wanted to thrive, to prove its worth. They saw it in the humans' eyes. They could already sense that Earth wasn't just a bystander in galactic history. It was about to play a central role. The diplomatic team, once so sure of their superior position, now found themselves struggling to control the situation. They watched as the humans explained their technologies, and each reveal only raised more questions. Earth's spacecraft had evolved to rival anything the Council had ever seen. Their weapons were unlike anything in the galaxy, simple in design but brutally effective. Humans were relentless, adaptable, and resourceful. Where others followed established patterns, humans thrived by breaking them. The task force knew they couldn't let this happen. If Earth joined the war, the Council's carefully controlled galaxy would be changed forever. The stakes had never been higher. But as the Council's representatives left Earth's military headquarters, they knew one thing for sure: they had underestimated humanity. And that mistake could cost them everything. The war between the Gorth and the Vrix had reached a fever pitch. Two of the most powerful factions in the galaxy were locked in an all-out battle, and the consequences of their conflict were beginning to spill over into the territories of neighboring species. The Galactic Council, once a beacon of peace, was no longer able to keep the situation in check. Members of the Council, having monitored the situation from afar, realized that the war would soon spread beyond the Gorth and Vrix. The consequences could be catastrophic for everyone in the galaxy. As the war raged on, the Gorth and Vrix both appealed to Earth for support. The Council had feared this moment would come, and they knew they had to act quickly to prevent Earth from entering the fray. With humans now firmly entrenched in space exploration and military power, their involvement could tip the balance, and lead to an uncontrollable escalation. If the war dragged on with humanity involved, the outcome was anyone's guess. To ensure Earth stayed neutral, the Council sent its best diplomatic and military teams to Earth, hoping they could convince humanity's leaders to stay out of the conflict. The task force had been briefed on Earth's unpredictability, but nothing could have prepared them for what they encountered. General Sarah Drake greeted the Council representatives at the Human Military Command Center. Her presence was striking, not just because of her leadership but because of the air of unshakable confidence she carried. The Council envoys had been prepared to deal with an eager, perhaps naive force, but instead they were met with a hardened, disciplined military ready for war. The humans weren't just interested in fighting, they were determined to win. Their soldiers displayed an almost unnerving focus, a trait born of centuries of warfare on their home planet. Earth's rise to power wasn't the result of pure technological prowess alone. It was the result of humans adapting and innovating, learning from their past mistakes, and applying those lessons to the stars. In a matter of decades, they had gone from primitive space exploration to creating fleets that rivaled the greatest empires of the galaxy. The Council representatives watched in disbelief as Earth's military strategies were unveiled. The humans had no fear of a drawn-out war. Their tactics focused not on sheer numbers but on efficiency, precision, and striking at the most vulnerable points of an enemy's strategy. While other species relied on long-standing tactics that had worked for millennia, humans had developed an ability to quickly adapt, finding weaknesses and exploiting them. "Do you understand what you're dealing with?" General Drake asked, her voice steady but sharp. The Council's envoys, who had once felt so sure of their position, now found themselves on the back foot. It wasn't just Earth's technology that made them dangerous. It was their mindset. Humans didn't just fight wars, they studied them. Every battle, every conflict had taught them something new. And when they entered a war, they entered it with a single purpose: victory. "We've fought for survival since the dawn of our existence," Drake continued. "If you think that entering this war will keep the galaxy safe, you are gravely mistaken. We can bring an end to it, on our terms." The Council members exchanged uneasy glances. They had hoped to contain the situation, to keep Earth on the sidelines. But now, they understood that this was not a species they could easily control. The humans had their own vision for the galaxy, one that didn't fit neatly into the Council's established order. And that vision had the potential to shake the very foundation of galactic politics. Back in the Council chambers, the discussion grew heated. There was no longer any question that humans were capable of overwhelming power. The real question was whether they would use that power to reshape the galaxy, or whether they would tear it apart in the process. The task force's failure to prevent Earth's involvement only deepened the Council's fear. Earth wasn't just a wild card anymore. It was a force of nature, and no one could predict what would happen next. As Earth's military presence expanded, the Council's fears began to take shape. The task force that had been sent to Earth returned with unsettling news. General Sarah Drake had made it clear that Earth would not only join the war, but would do so on its own terms. The Council had underestimated the humans' ability to make rapid, effective decisions. Earth's soldiers weren't just well-trained. They were deeply strategic, and their methods of warfare were unlike anything the Council had seen before. The Council had always prided itself on its ability to predict outcomes, to control the flow of events with diplomacy and military strength. But now, with Earth on the battlefield, nothing seemed certain. Humanity's ability to adapt to any situation and learn from its mistakes set it apart from every other species. The Gorth and Vrix, despite their long-standing history of war, relied on tried and true tactics that could easily be anticipated. Humans, on the other hand, did not follow the rules. They fought with a unique combination of creativity and ruthlessness, often using unconventional methods that made them impossible to predict. The Council convened in an emergency session, where members of the task force reported on what they had seen. Earth's military leaders, they said, had developed an uncanny knack for reading the battlefield in ways the Council had never anticipated. General Drake and her team spoke with a kind of unshakable calm, laying out Earth's strategies with precision. They didn't rely solely on overwhelming force, but instead focused on exploiting weaknesses that even the most advanced alien species would miss. They don't need numbers, one of the Council's military advisors said. Their strength lies in their unpredictability. We can't fight like them. Another advisor, a Zorath representative, leaned forward. And their weapons. They've designed new technologies that we haven't even begun to understand. It's not just their firepower, it's the way they use it. They don't waste a single shot. The Council was at a loss. It was one thing to face an enemy who could be outmatched with better technology, but it was another entirely to face an opponent who knew exactly how to use what they had. Earth's military had faced centuries of conflict on their home planet, and they had learned to survive through a mix of sheer willpower and ingenuity. What the humans lacked in advanced weaponry, they made up for in sheer determination and an understanding of warfare that seemed far beyond their technological level. General Drake's words kept echoing in the minds of the Council members. We'll end the war in months. And we won't just win, we'll reshape the outcome. The Council's fear grew as they realized Earth's military wasn't just a force to be reckoned with, it was a force capable of ending the war entirely. The Gorth and Vrix, locked in their endless conflict, had already shown their willingness to fight until nothing was left. But the humans had something neither faction did. A vision for the future. They weren't fighting to survive. They were fighting to create a lasting peace, one that they believed could reshape the entire galaxy. As Earth's strategy unfolded, the Council began to see a terrifying possibility. If humanity succeeded in ending the war and establishing their own terms, the balance of power in the galaxy would shift. No longer would the Council hold the reins of control. Earth's leaders were determined to make their mark, and the galaxy would have to adapt to their way of thinking. Some Council members saw the threat Earth posed as an opportunity, a way to bring lasting peace through unexpected means. Others, however, began to plot how to neutralize Earth's growing influence. The task force's return had only made it clearer. Earth wasn't just a player in the war. It was becoming the one force that could change everything. The question now was whether the galaxy's established order could survive humanity's unyielding drive. The Council had entered this situation thinking they could control Earth's actions, but now they were facing a reality they hadn't prepared for. Humans weren't here to follow orders. They were here to lead. The war between the Gorth and the Vrix showed no signs of slowing, and with Earth now involved, the Council's worst fears were materializing. It had become clear that humans weren't just participants in the conflict. They were a game changer. Despite their relative inexperience in galactic warfare, Earth's strategy and ingenuity made them a force that could no longer be ignored. The Gorth and Vrix fleets, once seen as the most powerful in the galaxy, were now facing a new kind of threat: humanity's unpredictability. The Council convened once again, growing more divided with each passing day. Some members, particularly those from the more conservative factions, argued for a diplomatic approach to stop Earth from further escalation. They pushed for stronger sanctions and even considered diplomatic isolation to force humanity back into submission. But others were beginning to understand that such measures would not work. Earth was not a species that could be manipulated with words alone. Their resolve was stronger than any threat the Council could impose. As the Council debated, General Sarah Drake and her team were working behind the scenes, pushing forward their own agenda. Despite the mounting pressure from the Council, Earth's leaders were determined to reshape the course of the war, and possibly the entire galaxy. It became clear that the humans weren't simply looking for a way to end the conflict. They were positioning themselves to take control of it. They had proposed a bold, almost reckless plan: strike at the heart of both the Gorth and Vrix fleets simultaneously. If successful, it could end the war in a matter of weeks. But the risk was enormous. The Council was in disbelief when the proposal reached their hands. A direct assault on both factions. It was unheard of. The Gorth and Vrix had been fighting for centuries, and each had their own formidable defenses. Earth's plan wasn't just audacious, it was suicidal. Yet it was also undeniably brilliant. The humans proposed to strike with a two-pronged assault, using their smaller, more agile ships to infiltrate and dismantle key targets in both fleets. The entire operation was designed to destabilize the war from the inside out, turning both factions against each other in the chaos. "We can bring this war to a stop," General Drake said in her message to the Council. "But you'll have to trust us. We won't follow your rules. We'll create new ones. This is our gamble. But if we win, the galaxy will change forever." Her words were met with silence. The Council had always prided itself on controlled, measured decisions. There was no room for risk in their calculations, but Earth's willingness to go all in, to throw everything on the table and let the chips fall where they may, was something they had never anticipated. The Council was torn. Some of them wanted to stop the humans, fearing that their success would upset the balance of power forever. Others saw the opportunity to take back control, to reshape the galaxy's power structure with Earth at its core. But no one could deny the growing possibility that the humans might succeed. Their gamble was one of boldness and audacity, and if it paid off, it could not only end the war, but potentially create a new order where humanity was at the forefront. Back on Earth, General Drake's team was already preparing for the operation. Every detail had been carefully planned, every contingency accounted for. The risk was monumental, but the reward could change the fate of the galaxy. Earth's military leaders knew this wasn't just a fight for survival. It was a chance to define humanity's place in the galaxy once and for all. The Council's representatives watched in mounting tension as Earth's fleet mobilized. There was no turning back now. The humans had made their move, and the question was no longer whether they could succeed, but what would happen to the galaxy if they did. Would the Council remain in control, or would they have to bend to the will of a species that refused to play by anyone's rules? The gamble had begun, and the stakes were higher than anyone could have imagined. As Earth's forces prepared for their bold assault, the galaxy's balance hung in the balance. The Council's chambers were filled with whispered conversations, as leaders from across the galaxy weighed the possibility of success or failure. No one, not even the most experienced military minds, could predict the outcome of Earth's audacious gamble. Every Council member knew that if humanity succeeded, they would not only end the war, they would change the entire political landscape of the galaxy. And if they failed, the consequences could be devastating. Not just for Earth, but for everyone involved. General Sarah Drake's plan was one that only humans would dare to conceive. The coordinated two-pronged attack would target the heart of both the Gorth and Vrix fleets, cripple their command structures, and sow enough confusion to turn the tides of the war. If successful, it would essentially force both factions into a fragile ceasefire, giving Earth an unprecedented opportunity to broker peace on its own terms. It was a risk, perhaps the most dangerous one Earth had ever taken, but it was also their only chance to take control of the situation. The first phase of the operation began under a veil of secrecy. Earth's fleet, composed of stealth ships and elite soldiers, began their infiltration of the Gorth fleet. The Gorth, known for their sheer strength and impenetrable defenses, were unprepared for the swift, covert nature of the human assault. Using newly developed technology, Earth's ships bypassed the Gorth's heavy defense grids, slipping into key locations undetected. Within hours, the Gorth's communication systems were disabled, leaving their forces in chaos. The second phase of the plan targeted the Vrix, whose advanced intelligence and strategic mindsets had made them a formidable enemy for centuries. But the Vrix were not as unpredictable as the Gorth. Their reliance on logic and structure made them vulnerable to Earth's more unconventional tactics. General Drake's forces used misinformation and simulated attacks to infiltrate the Vrix's command centers, sowing confusion in the upper echelons of their leadership. The Vrix, masters of coordination, struggled to regain control as their communications were systematically dismantled. The chaos on both fronts was building, and it was clear that Earth's strategy was working. Back in the Council chambers, The news was met with mixed reactions. Some members couldn't hide their growing admiration for humanity's approach. The unexpected efficiency and precision of Earth's attack left many stunned. Others, however, were worried. The balance of power in the galaxy had always relied on structure and order. Now, Earth was proving that there was another way, a way that didn't follow the Council's rigid rules. "This is madness," one of the Council members argued. "We cannot allow this to continue. The war was ours to control, and now it's slipping away." Another Council member, an Anari diplomat, remained silent for a moment before responding. "Perhaps this was never about control. Perhaps Earth is showing us that the galaxy doesn't need more of the same power struggles. Maybe they're showing us a new way to move forward." But the question lingered: was humanity truly capable of steering the galaxy toward peace, or was their rise to power just another form of chaos in disguise? As the operation unfolded, the situation grew more unpredictable. The Gorth and Vrix, now reeling from the unexpected attacks, were scrambling to recover. Their war, which had once seemed inevitable and endless, now seemed on the brink of unraveling. The question on every mind was whether Earth could truly seize this moment, not just to stop the war, but to shift the balance of power entirely. On Earth, General Drake stood in her command center, watching the live feeds of the operation's progress. There was no turning back now. They had committed fully to the gamble. The outcome, for better or worse, would define humanity's place in the galaxy. Her voice was calm, though there was a hint of determination. "We finish this, no matter what." The future of the galaxy was now in the hands of the humans. They had put everything on the line, and whether it was a victory or a disaster, the result would echo through the stars for centuries to come. As the human forces pressed on with their plan, the galaxy watched with bated breath. Both the Gorth and Vrix fleets, once feared for their might, were faltering under the weight of Earth's unpredictable tactics. The rapid success of the first wave was undeniable. Earth's technological superiority, combined with their unconventional strategies, had left both factions reeling. But the war was far from over, and the final outcome still hung in the balance. The humans had made their move, but could they keep the momentum going? The Gorth were formidable warriors, but they were not known for their adaptability. Once their communications were shattered and their command structure fractured, they struggled to reorganize. Earth's forces took full advantage of this weakness, striking with precision to target their most critical weaknesses. Each blow was calculated, each move deliberate. Yet the Gorth were not finished. They fought back with an animalistic ferocity, determined to protect their homeworld at any cost. On the other front, the Vrix were struggling to regain control. Their advanced intelligence and reliance on strategy were being outwitted at every turn. Their leadership, once the epitome of tactical brilliance, was now floundering under the weight of misinformation and chaos. Earth's elite forces had turned the Vrix's own strengths against them, sowing doubt in their minds and disrupting their every move. But even the Vrix, with their cold, logical minds, would not be easily defeated. They adapted quickly, and soon they were learning from their mistakes. In the council chambers, the atmosphere was tense. Some members, particularly the more cautious factions, were beginning to accept the possibility that Earth's gamble might succeed. They could no longer deny the effectiveness of the human strategy. General Sarah Drake had proven to be a capable leader, and her forces had already managed to shift the tide of the war. But not all were convinced. "We cannot allow this to continue," one of the more radical council members, a Krellian warlord, growled. "The balance of power is shifting, and we have done nothing to stop it. If Earth succeeds, they will set the stage for their own dominance. We will become irrelevant in our own galaxy." Another member, a diplomatic representative from the Anari, spoke up. "Isn't that the point? Maybe we're being too cautious. Earth's methods are unorthodox, but maybe that's exactly what the galaxy needs. A new approach, one that doesn't rely on old power structures and endless conflict." There was a long silence as the members exchanged uneasy glances. The Gorth and Vrix were clearly losing ground, and the humans were pushing forward with relentless determination. The Council was now faced with a difficult choice: intervene and risk escalating the situation, or allow Earth to continue on its path and hope they could be controlled once the war was over. On Earth, General Drake was already planning the next phase of the operation. The Gorth and Vrix had both begun to recover, their forces regaining cohesion. The human military had to act quickly if they were to finish what they had started. The stakes were higher than ever. A single misstep could undo everything. The pressure was mounting, but Drake showed no signs of hesitation. She had led Earth to this point, and she wasn't about to back down now. "Prepare for the final push," she ordered. "We end this now, or we risk everything." Her words were decisive, and they rang through the command center like a clarion call. The humans had already proven they were willing to take risks, to fight in ways no one else would. But now they had to prove they could finish what they had started. The galaxy's future depended on it. Back in the council chambers, discussions continued, but there was an undeniable shift. The realization had begun to settle in. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for the future of the galaxy. Whether the council was ready for it or not, Earth was about to reshape everything. And the question no one could answer was whether that would be a victory or a catastrophe. The tide had turned, and now it was up to Earth to seize its moment or lose everything. The final push had begun. General Sarah Drake and her forces were ready to deliver the decisive blow that would either end the war or plunge the galaxy into an even more uncertain future. The Gorth and Vrix, though wounded and disorganized, were not defeated yet. They had regrouped, their leadership now aware of the true threat humanity posed. In response, both factions shifted tactics, desperate to hold onto the remnants of their fleets and their pride. The fate of the galaxy was now determined by a delicate balance of power: who would dominate and who would be forced to submit. Humanity's approach had been unconventional from the start, but their resolve was unmatched. General Drake had built a strategy that played on the weaknesses of both the Gorth and Vrix. Now, Earth's forces were deploying their most daring tactic yet: a simultaneous strike on the heart of both enemy fleets, with a new form of weaponry that would disrupt their forces in ways they had never experienced. It was a gamble, a risk that could pay off handsomely or lead to disaster. But there was no turning back. The time had come to either change the course of history or watch the galaxy slip further into chaos. The Council, divided as it was, now watched as Earth's fleet moved into position. The debate over whether to intervene had only grown more intense in recent days. Some members feared that humanity's rising influence would destabilize the galaxy permanently, shifting the balance of power into Earth's hands. They had hoped the war would resolve itself, but now that Earth was at the helm, they understood just how much was at stake. No one could ignore the reality that if Earth succeeded in this final strike, the galaxy would have to bend to its will. "I don't think we're ready for this," the Zorith representative spoke quietly, his voice tinged with anxiety. "If we allow them to continue, Earth could gain an unstoppable position in the galaxy. The Council may no longer hold sway over the decisions that affect us all." "Are we not all in this together?" another Council member, an older Jorlan diplomat, countered. The war was never truly about control. It was about survival. If humanity succeeds, they are simply ensuring that no one will ever again threaten the peace of the galaxy. Perhaps it is time to let them lead. The debate raged on, but in the end, none of the members could agree on what should be done. Meanwhile, on Earth's flagship, General Drake prepared for the operation's final phase. "This is it," she said, her voice firm, commanding. The crew of the flagship looked at her, all of them knowing that the next few hours could change everything. The coordinates were locked in, and the strike was moments away. But this time, it wouldn't just be an attack. It would be a message, a declaration. Drake turned to her officers. "The Gorth and Vrix are divided. Their survival instincts will kick in, and they will fight tooth and nail to maintain control. but they don't understand what we're doing. We're not here to just win a war. We're here to change how wars are fought. We're here to end this once and for all." With those words, the ships launched into their final assault. The Gorth and Vrix fleets were both stunned as Earth's forces descended upon them. This time with a weapon that the enemy had never seen before, a powerful pulse that disrupted their systems, rendering their weapons useless and their ships immobilized. It was a staggering blow to both factions, one that left them in chaos and confusion. In the heart of the battle, General Drake watched as the Gorth and Vrix fleets faltered under the onslaught. This was it. Earth had taken its shot. The war was ending, whether the galaxy was ready for it or not. The question now was whether the Council would accept humanity as a new force in the galaxy, or whether they would resist, knowing the world they once knew was slipping away. As the battle drew to a close, both fleets were on the brink of collapse, their forces shattered and their leaders scrambling. Earth had done it. The war had ended, but at what cost? And what would come next for a galaxy that had never known peace under one banner? Humanity's future now lay in their own hands, and the galaxy would have to reckon with the dawn of a new era. The final blow had been struck. The pulse weapons, deployed by Earth's fleet, had crippled both the Gorth and Vrix. The once proud fleets were now in disarray, their advanced systems rendered useless, their ships floating aimlessly in space. The battle was over. But as the dust settled, the galaxy found itself on the cusp of something far more complex than a mere victory. On Earth's flagship, General Sarah Drake stood before the holographic display, watching as the last remnants of the enemy forces were neutralized. The quiet that followed the chaos was deafening. The war had ended, but the consequences were only beginning to take shape. "Is it over?" one of her officers asked, the fatigue evident in his voice. There was no joy in the moment, just the weight of what they had accomplished and what it meant. "For now," Drake replied, her gaze fixed on the view outside the ship's window. The stars seemed strangely still, as if even the galaxy itself was waiting for something. But what comes next is the true challenge. Back on Earth, the leaders of the various nations were already in discussions, working to figure out how to manage the victory. They had won, but at a cost that none could fully comprehend yet. The political landscape had shifted. Earth was no longer just a player. It had become the dominant force in the galaxy, and with that power came responsibility. The United Earth Council, the governing body that now oversaw Earth's participation in galactic affairs, convened immediately after the battle's end. President Eleanor Grayson, the newly appointed leader of the council, addressed the room, her expression somber. "We've won," she said, her voice steady but filled with the burden of the moment. "But victory isn't a simple thing. It means Earth will have to step up in ways we've never imagined. We are the galaxy's new power. And with that comes the responsibility to lead, not just in terms of military strength, but in diplomacy, cooperation, and a fair future for everyone." Her words were met with nods of agreement from some, but others, more cautious, feared what would come next. Would the galaxy accept humanity's newfound dominance, or would resistance grow from the other factions? Could Earth manage its position without falling into the same traps of greed and conflict that had plagued the Gorth and Vrix? The Council could only hope they had the answers. Elsewhere, the Gorth and Vrix, now forced into an uneasy ceasefire, were beginning to reckon with their losses. The leaders of both factions had been humiliated, their forces shattered. They had underestimated Earth, and now they faced the reality of a galaxy where they were no longer the dominant powers. But neither the Gorth nor the Vrix were a species to be easily subdued. The fragile peace that had been established after the war was tenuous at best. "They'll regroup," Drake said to her officers as they watched the diplomatic signals from both the Gorth and Vrix. "They won't go down without a fight, but they know they can't beat us alone anymore. It's time to work out how to reshape this galaxy, all of us." In the council chambers, members from all corners of the galaxy were in heated discussions. They could no longer ignore Earth's influence. The question now was whether Earth would use its newfound power to dominate or to forge a path to a more balanced galaxy. The negotiations were beginning, but so was the tension. Would Earth seek alliances, or would it set itself apart, standing as the galaxy's sole leader? The future was uncertain, and even as the war ended, it was clear that humanity's role in the galaxy had only just begun. Earth had proven that it was capable of extraordinary feats. The question was, would it now prove capable of bringing about a new era of peace, or would it become just another force vying for control? "We've changed the galaxy," Drake said, speaking to her team as the first signs of peace negotiations began to unfold. "But now we need to decide what kind of galaxy we want to build. The future is ours to shape." The new era had dawned, and Earth was at its forefront. The path forward was uncharted, but humanity's resolve would be the compass that guided the galaxy into whatever came next. And with that, the stars felt just a little bit different. The galaxy was no longer the same, and Earth was no longer a spectator. It had become the architect of the future. But what that future held, no one could say for sure, not yet. But humanity was ready for whatever came next.